One final thing I'd like to show you with hashes, and let's remove this hash for now, is that we can store much more complex systems of data within a hash. We can actually nest hashes within other hashes to create multidimensional hashes in a similar way to how we could with arrays. Let's take a look at a multidimensional hash which we're going to call cacti. And the cacti array will contain a number of different cactus plants, and what I'm going to do is, instead of simply putting the whole thing on one line, I'm going to actually do some complex nesting here to reflect the way in which our arrays are actually shaping up. So what we're actually doing here is creating a hash within the outer hash of the cacti. So mutant red is not just an element, it's also a hash in its own right. And we're able to split up the different elements within that by using the curly brackets here. In the outer array we use the rounded brackets, and then within we use the curly brackets. Once again, each element, whether it be a scalar element such as the genus element here, or whether it's an element like mutant red, which is in itself a hash or an array, we have to use a comma to separate each one. Star shape is going to be the second element here, a star-shaped cactus, and we're going to store some data within that inner array, the inner hash I should say, about the particular kind of cactus that it is. Now these two inner arrays have a very similar structure, but they don't need to. You could have whatever structure you wanted. So this whole set of lines here is actually just one line of Perl. I've split it over into several different lines so that it'll be easier to read later on. We can easily see the structure because we can see the outer array is bounded by these two round brackets here, and then everything within that is part of the array. Then we've got the two curly brackets here, and the elements within there are indented one more space. Once again, this has nothing to do with the way in which the Perl executable is going to interpret this script. This is just to do with readability for when we come back and look at it with our human eyes. Perl wouldn't care whether you stretched it all out as it is now, or whether you put it all very condensed form on one line. You can in fact code your whole scripts on one line and just use semicolons to demarcate the different lines of code and never bother to hit the enter key. It wouldn't make for a very pleasant experience, however, when you came back in a couple of months and tried to read the code that you'd created earlier on, but it would still be understood just as well by the Perl executable. So now we've created our cacti hash of hashes, we can access it in a very similar way to the way that we accessed our multidimensional array. Multidimensional hash works just the same way. We need to use this little arrow sign here. This uses a minus rather than the array key separator operators up here, which use an equal sign as part of the arrow. Important not to get those two mixed up. And this line of code will access Well, let's see what it does step by step. The first word, of course, is the print function to tell us to output whatever this line comes up with to the standard output, in this case the command prompt. Then we tell it exactly what we're referring to here. In this case it's the cacti hash, and we want to refer to it in scalar context. That is, we're going to be looking for one of its elements. In this case that element is the star shape, and the star shape is itself a hash, so we're going to use this operator here followed by the particular element within the inner hash, which is the species. So we're looking at cacti, we look up here to cacti, we're looking down at star shape, which is the inner hash, then finally we're looking within that inner hash at the species element. So if we move over to our command prompt, ornatum, let's take a look back at our script, and that's the correct value. So as we can see, hashes and arrays are very flexible ways of storing data that allow us a great deal of power over the structure in which we arrange our data.